Hello and warmly welcome to SAP on Azure podcast episode 223. We are here on SAP and Microsoft, and we are today with Holger and Robert to talk everything and anything related to these topics. Hi and warmly welcome. Encryption and as well and security is a super important topic. However, that means that you could do, many customer would do, for example, database encryption like Hana encryption, or would do a host-based encryption on the Azure. Many customer would use a different antivirus, for example, like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. All these things are very useful and important from a best practices perspective. However, there might be some influence on performance. Like if you do an encryption, you needed some compute to encrypt the stuff when you send the data, and when you read it, you need to decrypt it, and that might influence performance of the rest of the application, like SAP. However, how much that would be impacted, the best way would be to know it's to test it, And today we have Cameron and Evren, who are really expert in this area, and not just that, they did an intensive performance benchmark testing and switching on and off these feature and measuring actually the real impact on the system, I'm more than happy to welcome both of them again in the show. But again, maybe some of folks would not know them and would see them for the first time. So, Evren, let's start first with you, and just can you introduce yourself to the folks that might see you for the first time?
Absolutely. So I'm really very happy to be here. My name is Evren Buyruk. I think this is my fifth or sixth time. I think so. And I'm really very happy to be here, and especially with my colleague Cameron Gardiner, who has been, above and beyond on the security topic. So I'm really very excited. So basically, I'm with Microsoft International Customer Success Unit, and I mainly focus on networking, infrastructure, security, reliability, and I provide customers with Microsoft best practices around these topic areas. And I'm really very happy to be here today to speak about the encryption topic with Cameron.
Super.
Thanks for having me.
Cameron.
Gardiner. I'm based in Microsoft in Singapore. I think I've been with Microsoft about 18 years, and always focusing on the SAP workload. More recently, I'm working on certification, benchmarking, and a special focus in the last few years around security, as this topic has become more and more important.
Yeah. And basically when we were preparing a bit, I understand you do really intensive testing, and you run actually the ML4 benchmark, which is an HANA specific benchmark, right? And you were doing also in the past, you published and tested also articles using on Microsoft Defender, both for Linux and for Windows. But now it's really the question is, could it have some impact on the performance of the SAP system, and how much?
Yes, this was this performance lab was developed in response to questions from customers about what is the overhead of TDE, host-based encryption, Defender, other topics. So when we certify for SAP, our objective is to get the certification done as quickly as possible. We certainly do not run those benchmarks with things like Defender installed. So this performance lab was to take a realistic customer scenario. So I have TDE, I have Defender installed, I'm using host-based encryption, and in the last part of the performance lab, I also set up Hana System Replication between zones and then a disaster recovery zone. So we might have time to touch on it, but I tested in our Sweden region, and then I had my disaster recovery system in Germany. So this is a very realistic deployment.
Yes, yeah, and many customers would do it, yeah.
And then just to highlight again, Karen, so what you basically did is you implemented and installed all the security best practices, basically, and then tested the impact on enabling these security best practices, encryption and whatever, and then without, and then that's where the results came from, and to show what impact or not impact these additional security features had.
Yeah, I've got a presentation here where I go through the exact detail of what I did. So I created a bare SUSE 15.5 system with the latest ML4 benchmark kit, which is one of the benchmark kits used for HANA certification. So I created a base, then I applied HANA TDE, then I removed TDE and applied.
So it's HANA database encryption is or how it's called,
transparent database encryption. Yeah. I then applied Defender on the app servers and then Defender on the database servers with no exclusions, which is the worst case scenario.
Yes,
basically.
Yes.
Then I applied the exclusions, then HPE, and then I actually tested a tool called SELinux, which is really, this would be for government, law enforcement type customers might want to consider this. And in the final tests, I did HSR in different modes.
Yeah.
Now, we probably don't have so much time, but we can put this a cut down version of this PowerPoint maybe online.
Yes.
What I do is actually give the command lines that I used. I show the exclusions that I used on the app servers. So it's quite detailed, and we can share all of this with customers. Everything is public. So a little bit about the lab. So these were our M series with 4 terabytes of RAM, and a bit about the HANA build. What I'd like to do is very briefly go through some of these links that I think are important. So I've been on your show, I think, I'm not sure how many times, but I've definitely covered the documentation that I developed for Linux. So there's a big change, and this change has been driven out of this performance lab because we got really excellent results. So we went into this with a very conservative approach. So we initially told customers that for Defender on Linux, we recommend real-time scanning is off. That's because we wanted to be super cautious. Now, I can say we've got 90,000 customers running Defender with SAP applications. We can see a limited amount of data from our backend telemetry. Around 45,000 of those are Windows and 45,000 are Linux. So Linux has been very successful. So part of part of the reason we're able to change our recommendation to real-time equals true is we move to eBPF. Now, just for the SUSE customers out there, SUSE 12, they use an old Linux kernel. So please pay attention to this limitation here. It's really best if you have a big, busy system on SUSE 12 and you want to protect your system with Defender, I would really recommend moving to SUSE 15. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay. So the article for Windows has also been enhanced. We've made some great progress on Windows as well. Just from a time point of view, we don't have too much time to go through it, but I would ask any customer out there experiencing any problem, please come to us. Please log a request through the Defender portal. Follow the documentation. But we have found a customer where they were using DLP, and that caused a problem. So our recommendations here is super clear. Do not expose SAP shares to Windows clients that are running DLP.
Okay, interesting. Okay, that would be a SAP MNT and global, for example, and these kind of stuff.
Yes, so please don't do this. So I know I'll cut to the chase. So I know that everyone wants to see the results. Now the two graphs you see on screen, they show the same data. It's just the baseline is different. So if you look at the y-axis here, so with HANA Transparent Data Encryption and Defender on both the app server and the database server, I can detect no measurable impact, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, this is really good. We were very pleased with those results. So the SAP guys are doing a great job using the AES 256 silicon cores that are on the CPU. This is not running in software. This is hardware. So it's really fast.
And you mentioned that all those files were included, SAP files from a Defender perspective.
Yes, even with the exclusions set to none, we detected not only no regression in performance, we have ability to check the health of the sensor, how many events it's detecting, are there any cues on the sensor, and we see nothing. So
that's
we were super pleased.
That's really encouraging, because I mean, I remember when you were last time on, and when we talk about the Defender, you were also mentioning that, I mean, generally in SAP notes, they would say, please include, they recommend to exclude those SAP files because they can't really support different security solutions, that was a kind of
and
approach.
That would remain our recommendation to still exclude the HANA database persistence and log and shared, and we would still recommend excluding a lot of what's under user SAP. That's still our recommendation, but with the testing I did here, I wanted to test the most extreme case. I wanted to test the worst case scenario. Now, I do, in the documentation, I do call out that if you're running things like Adobe Document, T-Rex, Live Cache Content Server, you have to do extra things. And I do call out that your SAP mount directory, you shouldn't have many millions of files. That makes things really difficult. But what we can say, if you're running modern release of SAP with a modern operating system, and your system is not already overloaded in terms of CPU and memory, and your SAP mount, your job logs, spool files, interface files, this is all kept to a number, maybe 100,000, 200,000, in theory, even 300,000-400,000 should be okay. It's exceedingly unlikely that Defender will have a problem. This we have pretty much proven is safe, which is really good news. Not only is Defender safe, you can run it in conjunction with Hana Transparent Data Encryption and Azure Host Encryption. Of those three technologies, it was host encryption that did have, I mentioned here, 2.3% reduction.
It's nothing, yeah. It's really nothing, yeah.
I would argue that the benefit is really much more than the cost in that case. So just so everybody is clear on these different technologies, we should put this link into the YouTube site. But these are the technologies. So the server-side encryption is usually enabled by default. Encryption at host gives you encryption of the OS and data disks, as well as the temp disk, but and the AB and the cache, so your read-only cache, and also the data flows between your VM and the back-end storage. So some customers question us for the in-flight data encryption, and that's taken care of by encryption at host. Just a note on Azure Disk Encryption, we no longer recommend this this technology. So I've covered quite a lot there. Any questions before I go into a few more details?
All good, all good.
Okay, so we were very pleased. Just to clarify, the reason why you see a bigger gap here is just I wanted to show the reduction in the ML for TPH, which was just a little bit.
It also took me some time, but it's this very same graph. You basically zoomed in on the right graph on the top, basically.
The one on the left is zoomed in. The one on the right
correct.
is zoomed out.
Yes, yeah.
So this one's zero based, and this one is zoomed in.
Yeah.
Okay, TDE, SAP have done a great job here. So what we were looking for was not only performance regression, we were looking to see that the code was well behaved. So what does that mean? If we see Defender when it's under heavy load, if we see that one CPU, in particular CPU 0 or CPU 1, is pegged at 100% with system time, that's really unhealthy. So across all these tests, we saw balanced, properly threaded,
Nice.
well-behaved
Okay.
code. So we didn't see anything. And actually, the customers can try this themselves on a test system. If you either encrypt or decrypt a HANA database, it's actually very fast. And as it's doing it, you'll see almost no CPU utilization because almost all of it is offloaded onto the Intel chip, which has a hardware instruction for AES 256.
Super. So it's spread it across the different threads. That's great. Yeah. So no bottleneck actually on one CPU.
Yeah. So if you want to test this, just run select from sysm encryption overview, and you'll get an output, and you'll see persistence, which is your data, log, which is obviously log, and backup.
So you included backup as well. It's not just the data and log, right?
Yeah. So for security, highly recommend if you do nothing other than encrypt your backups, because what is the best way to compromise the system is to steal your backups. So encrypting backups is a must. Please do this.
And also one other thing is customers can also leverage MUA, multi-user authorization, for the delete operations, that it is actually just assigning this role to another person in the same or in a different tenant. Basically, that person is not going to be able to delete or tamper with the Azure backup or the backup file without the permission of the person that has given access to these delete operations. So it can actually just be added on top for security measure to take on top of the encryption.
So you cover access basically and the encryption then in the end.
Correct.
Yeah. And we also have options with Azure around immutable storage. So your backup can be permanent. And but where do we use immutable storage? So this is a ransomware. This is a mitigation from ransomware, so they cannot encrypt your backups and things like this. Turning to Defender for Endpoint, so no measurable impact at all. But as I say, we still recommend to put in place the exclusions, and I document the exclusions in my articles. And we tried very hard to get queuing and other high resource utilization scenarios, but Defender was very well behaved.
Correct.
We also check the tool. This would be one for customers. Always check ABAP meter. So go into SE38 and run SSA cat and choose the ABAP meter profile. So, for example, does Defender cause any of the ABAP meter values to slow down? The answer is we couldn't detect that.
Yeah. So ABAP meter is a small program which will select certain number of rows and measure it actually how much it takes time to send it and get it over the network from a database as well, right? And no impact. Okay.
Yeah. And also other operations, RFC and internal operations, no regression detected there. So these are the actual command lines, and many times I ran the ML4 benchmark with Defender completely stopped, and then compare it again with Defender started, and we see no impact. You can see here the configuration MD-ATP config real-time protection value enabled. So all of the testing was done with real-time enabled. So host encryption, here we do see a little overhead. I would argue that 2% is probably an acceptable amount. So that was with host encryption on the app servers and host encryption on the database servers. And you can see the number here, 4537. We go back, you can see 464. So it's a very small amount, but this does give additional layer of defense against security threats. So
Yeah.
I would recommend this.
Not too much. I mean, if it's 2%, it's little. It's really still little.
Yep. I think it's easily justifies the case for HPE. The next topic is more complex. So this is SELinux, which is a advanced security solution for Linux. I spent a lot of time on this. The documentation is not very good. So you'll probably find the commands I put into this presentation very useful. But SELinux has three basic modes: off, permissive, and enforcing. And when it's in permissive mode, it's running, but it will not block actions. When it's enforcing, it will actually, for example, if a process tries to access a directory that it shouldn't be accessing, it will block it. In permissive mode, it will just log this. Now, if I summarize, the ML4 benchmark is unrunnable if you enable SELinux in permissive mode. It's so slow that the benchmark basically crashes and dies.
Okay.
Now, if you had, if I had the time to create a profile and to do a full SELinux implementation, I think this will work. I would say there'll still be quite an overhead. There'll definitely be an overhead. But this is quite a large consulting effort. So if they're very secure customers out there, they should contact their Linux vendors. You can see there are a few articles out there about SELinux together with SAP, but it's very much a consulting effort. And I would also say that it's not a one-time consulting effort, because if you upgrade your SAP release, deploy a new kernel, I would say things are going to change, and you will need to adjust your SELinux profile. For those who are interested in it, down the bottom you can see these are the SELinux. You see here I didn't create a profile, so it's saying unlabeled. But when you do a directory listing with -z, then it will show the additional attributes that you get with SELinux. But for high security customers, this would be the way to go. And yeah, there are other areas where you may wish to use SELinux. And yeah, SELinux is a separate project. So summarize. TDE, I recommend definitely use this. I think every customer should be using this. Defender for Endpoint, I can say that our solution, when running on modern operating systems with well-maintained systems, this is safe to do. Host-based encryption has a small overhead, and then all of them together running, no problem. I think that's completely safe to do. As I say down at the conclusion, can run these all together, but remember to configure exclusions for Defender.
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, huge encouragement for the customers, you know, that if I know somebody did it really deep dive testing and performance testing and really measuring and all these features, it's really encouraging to apply by themselves as well.
Yeah, I've got tons of testing data here that we haven't gone through, but we're very confident that if customers deploy as per these two articles here, paying particular attention around some of the non-S4 and non-NetWeaver systems, that we are sure Defender is very well tested and very well documented with SAP, and Defender's, as far as we can tell, it's the only security software that has specific testing and specific documentation for SAP workloads. And we get very positive reviews from customers that have had a lot of problems with security software in the past, and then they switch to Defender. We get very good feedback in that area.
You mentioned, Cameron, maybe we don't have much time this time, but you also tested with the Hana site replication. Shall we, do you want to give a little bit just the kind of highlights, and that maybe we could cover it sometimes later, or because it could be for itself subtopic.
It's a big topic, and we're still discussing some network scheduling optimization values and whether we should or whether we shouldn't. But the default parameters for HANA, so that the ML4 benchmark makes your HANA database really busy. So the default parameters, the default buffer sizes are just way not big enough. So you see here, performance dropped drastically, even in async mode. Now the reason is there's a memory structure that will fill up, and the default value is that if that memory structure is full, that HANA will wait until it's had a chance to send that out. So you see on the next one here, I changed the value to wait on full equals false.
Okay.
And so I'm still not getting back to the original throughput. Strangely, HSR sync mem is quite good. Now, the results you see here is just zone to zone. When I put the disaster recovery node in the third data center, the impact became much more, and we're doing some testing around network queuing algorithms and some other things that where we will probably publish this coming up.
Okay, all right. So I mean, I'm pretty sure we would have a follow-up topic. I mean, on this one as well in a deep dive.
I'll just tell you the parameter names from somewhere. So for log shipping async buffer size and log ship async wait on buffer full are very important, and go through these SAP notes here. But particularly for the DR node, we're seeing what we can achieve with some network tuning. That work is still in progress.
So when you mention network, Evren, you are also working on a VNet encryption topic, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, you are on mute.
Right. So I was on mute. Yes, that is correct. So I can share my screen. I know that we are running out of time, and I can mention about the Azure Virtual Network encryption. Let me actually just share my screen very fast. Let me know if you guys see my screen. Basically, yeah. I'm just gonna go very fast to the topic about Azure Virtual Network encryption. Basically, it is a feature of Azure Virtual Networks. So it is allowing customers who enable this feature seamlessly encrypt and decrypted traffic between Azure virtual machines, and then by way of creating a DTLS tunnel. So basically, this solution really enables you to seamlessly, as I said, encrypt this traffic between virtual machines and even the virtual machine skill set VMs within the same virtual network. But when I say same virtual network, sometimes it might be actually just misunderstood. What if that's my VM to VM communication across regions? So how is that going to be actually just encrypted? Basically, nothing is changing. When we say the same virtual network, it is the same customer virtual network. Basically, this is going to be using the peering, and then it is going to be enhancing the security encryption in transit capabilities in Azure. So in other words, customers are going to be able to just create the VNet address space and then create the spokes, and then spoke-to-spoke communication or intra-DC encryption is communication encryption is going to be enabled. And then it is going to leverage the DTLS, which I'm going to be talking about the datagram, technology and what exactly it means from the protocols of UDP and HTTP, why it is important. And then it is going to be actually just highlighting a lot of great information for the customers, is this technology might be actually just sounding now, it is expensive to enable, to use it, but in fact, it is actually free. So Microsoft is not necessarily charging anything when a customer enables the, Azure Virtual Network encryption, which is going to be providing them with VM to VM communication in an encrypted manner. Basically, when you're looking at the supported scenarios, it supports the VMs in the availability set or VMSS within the same virtual network. So there's also going to be a document, a link, which I am actually just going to make it available. So customers can go ahead and just use that link to understand and see what VMs are actually just supported. But I mentioned it here on the top. It is the EV4s and DV4 and DV5s and EV4, EV5, and then M-series VMs. These are all leveraging the Azure Virtual Network encryption.
So basically, that would be the certified VM SKU for SAP as well, generally speaking.
That is correct. But when a customer looks at Azure VMs and then high memory VMs like M-series VMs, you're going to be able to see a bunch of those all using, virtual network encryption, because this is actually not necessarily replacing, but is an alternative for the MACSAC, media access control security, which is IE standard. Basically, if a customer wants to provide themselves with a robust security between VMs for the communication, and then this is going to be actually just a wonderful solution. So now the question most of the time is being asked about what exactly the technology just being used under, virtual network encryption. Basically, as I mentioned, it is using the DTLS. DTLS is the communication protocol designed to provide security for datagram-based applications. So Cameron and I actually were in a call with one of our customers. So he also just mentioned that it is actually just going to be for streaming media, so voice IP, for example. So, but in the same time, this also brings up the UDP and STTP, because this is something that is actually, adapted to work with, connectionless transport protocols, which is actually the core of the user datagram protocol, UDP. So when we talk about a UDP, that we immediately just emphasize on the UDP amplification attacks, which requires nothing from the source perspective. Basically, the bad actor can go ahead and just spoof their source IP. They can make a small request to the destination server. It can actually just be a DNS server. They can send a small packet, and then the respondent, which is going to be the receiving part, is actually just going to respond with a big, chunk file for the recipient. So this communication is going to be actually just stacked on top of each other, and then there you're going to be actually just creating the UDP amplification attacks. So when the UDP amplification attack occurs, then the performance of that VM is going to be actually just degraded. All the topics that we talk about, the performance benchmarks, everything is going to get affected. But now we have a solution for that. The solution is DTLS, Datagram Transport Layer Socket, which actually is enhancing the security for VM to VM communication. It is going to ensure these reliable transport layers. Basically, it is a mechanism inside. I mean, of course, that we're not going to have enough time to, speak about everything about this technology, DTLS. It is something that I spend a lot of time. So it has the built-in features, and it is going to cater services to protect unreliable transport layers. It is going to be the security mechanism, to provide, with the scan of the UDP and STTP, make sure that these are secure, and then the VM to VM communication is going to be happening via a secure communication, because it does not require, the UDP does not require any connection or handshake. So basically the data can actually, or the traffic can be sent from any source to any destination. So we have solutions like, Azure DDoS, so we can definitely just enable that on top of, on top of this. But VM to VM communication is actually just going to be additional layer from the security point of view to cover the UDP and then HTTP attacks as well. And so now the question that I got actually previously, let's say that customer, based on what Cameron actually just meticulously described about this, MDE, host-based encryption, TDE all together, and then to provide the customers with robust, security for the encryption. And he also mentioned about exclusion when MDE used, and then everything is intact, everything is perfect. But can I, as a customer, can I go ahead and just enable VNet level encryption? The answer is yes. So now the question, is this going to be impacting anything on the performance? Absolutely not. We did not, see or notice any kind of like a, performance implications on that. Basically, we did not necessarily see any kind of degradation on the performance. Basically, it worked just like, flawlessly. So DTLS itself is really designed to secure this communication that use UDP. As I said, it is going to be for connectionless, communication, which is going to be the most important thing. Because why? Azure Backbone is already just leveraging AES for data at rest. Basically, the moment the customer, starts the storage account, it is going to AES 256. But what happens between the VMs is going to be actually just like, protected by the DTLS. I'm not saying TLS. DTLS is going to be covering also not only on the TLS part, because TLS meltdown is not even going to be possible because DTLS is not using that port or that, that socket. It is going to be protecting the UDP amplifications and then HTTP that we see from the attack perspective between two VMs. We see the UDP and HTTP, and then DTLS is going to cover that. But again, this is a very, robust topic. I'm sorry, vast topic, but robust information in it. It's very, steady information to share with the customer. So I'm actually willing to cover this in a more like, timely manner so I can actually go into the details.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic teaser. Sorry, Gordon.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll have a follow-up on this, Evren, right? It's just a bit teaser.
Yeah, it is very robust. Again, like the integrity part itself is very important. Like DTLS ensures the data integrity by using, authentication codes max. So basically, it is the message authentication codes, is not the media access control, which actually I'm going to be differentiating between those two, between MAC and MAX, two different things. But in the same time, this is also exam question, by the way, for some security exam takers. So it is going to be, DTLS is going to avoid the TCP meltdown problem, which is something the customers really just struggling with. Basically, it's not using the TCP. That is the reason why it's going to avoid the TCP meltdown. The stacking is not going to happen. So the stacking is not going to happen. And then customer is not going to get the degradation because the attacks are only just going to be on the UDP and HTTP. It's going to be covered by the DTLS. So it is the core of the technology, actually.
Yeah. Well, Evren, I'm pretty sure we have a deep dive follow-up on this topic as one of the next session. But guys, Cameron Evren really was great. I mean, honestly, I got the confidence. I always had a bit of suspicion to the enabling of encryption and antivirus use and performance. But actually, it is really the best just that somebody did a deep dive testing and proving, and giving confidence that's really having many parts, either no or really minimum impact, right? Yeah, thank you guys so much. And I'm pretty sure we will have a follow-ups on many, other stuff in this area as well, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.